something that I just wanted to cycle back to. You were talking about how to get the price from the agent, because let's say he's got 2 or 3 offers on board already. How do you kind of, because you were saying like, yeah, we've got to ask some questions to pull that out of him. How do you kind of pull that kind of price out? Because I guess that's probably a super useful tool. If your price, if you know what your walkaway price is, right? You set that in your own head, it's at 550, and then the agent pulls it out. We've already got offers at 560. But how do you get that out of them, essentially, is the question.
Well, it depends on the state, because in some states, and depends on the method of sale, they won't tell you. So that's difficult because they can't by law, for Queensland, for example. So it's difficult to get it out. So that makes it harder, and I've got to ask more questions. And sometimes it's just asking lots of questions and being persistent until they give you some sort of idea of where it needs to sit. But in most cases, I'll just say, hey, Joe, where you're at in this one, you're going to tell me that you've got 3 offers already. I'll say, great, what are you quoting? And you'll say, 500 plus. I say, okay, great. And where do you think it's going to land? Oh, I don't know. Like the market will determine that. We've got heaps of interest in it already. We're going to open it this Saturday, as Jeff just said. And we expect, we've had 50 inquiries online already about it. Okay, great. Mm-hmm. What's the situation with the seller, Joe? Like, where are they at? Oh, they're bought already, or they haven't bought already. Okay, cool. Well, what settlement do they want? I start to build rapport at that point. Okay, great. And then I'll drop into the mix. So where do you think it sits? Where do you think it sits? Oh, it's not me. It's the market that'll determine it. Sometimes the agent, when I ask that question, will say, oh, I reckon 540. I can't see it going over 540. Or, based on 12 Smith Street selling last week for 535, we might get 540, 550 for it at best. But, who knows? So they're already giving you an insight as to where they think it's going to land, or where they'll start to push the vendor to say, if we had an offer in that range, there's a good chance the agent's on board with you to try and push that through for a sale. So there's lots of different ways of, I'm throwing my pen at myself. There's lots of different ways to ask those questions and try and derive that information. But I just ask blunt questions after I build rapport and try and get straight answers out of them. And then if I can't get anything, if I get that far and I still haven't got any information out of them, I will say to them, look, the property that I said to you that we're under offer for down the road is at 520. They may have a little bit more in the tank than that, but we're all set at 520 on a similar property. Will 520 buy it, or are we wasting our time? Should I go buy that property? No, you're not wasting your time. Come on. Or, yeah, you're wasting your time. Okay, great. So it's not offers over 500. It's offers over 520, right? So you already know. Now, you can set that boat trap wherever you want to. You don't want to set it too high, because if you say we're under offer at 540 down the road, well, then you're kind of giving them indication that you might pay 540 if you tell them it's a very similar property. So I bait them like that. And I'm not talking about how much we'll spend on this property, but I'm telling them about how much we're already spending on the other one. And does that engage them to get an answer of, yes, you're wasting your time, or no, you're not? A lot of agents, when you go to that level of detail, will say that straight up to you and just say, you're wasting your time on this one if you've got expectations of that, or no, it's worth a shot, come along on Saturday and see it.
And when somebody says you're wasting their time, do you then just sort of put that in well, maybe we'll circle back if it doesn't sell? Is that or do you just forget about it altogether?
In that example, if I thought it was worth 550 with our research, and I said to them 520, 530, for example, as the bait price, and they said it's wasting your time, I'd give up on that property and move on. Because if we were that close, they'd engage us and they'd get you there to the open for inspection. That says to me that their expectations are probably high 500, 600, and that you're wasting your time, at least wasting your time in week one. That doesn't mean you don't circle back to it in 10 days time or whatever and keep an eye on it and monitor it. You may still go to the open inspection anyway, just to watch what's happening in the market and see that property. So you'll keep tabs on it and you'll stay in the game, but it's probably not one that I'd chase hard. And I'd say that openly to our clients. Like, if they've said to me no at that price point, I would think their expectations based on that are here, because of my experience as an agent, I would keep focusing on trying to find another opportunity that's better.
Yeah, and then you would also understand the terms of the vendor as well. The vendor saying, hey, I don't really have a reason to sell. I'm just kind of looking for the best price. Great. They're not a motivated seller. It's probably, wasting. It is, like you're saying, wasting your time there.
And most agents don't get asked those questions. Like, people didn't come to me all the time or open for inspections afterwards and drill me about the vendor and the circumstances and the timing. They just don't. They go through it. They fall in love with it, or they like it if it's an investment. And then they put an offer on the table, and they've got no time pressure, no leverage, no understanding of what the motivation is for the seller. And it's just left flapping in the breeze. Now, one of the other negotiation tips that was given from one of the other people in the group yesterday to your response was, I make a 48-hour offer deadline. Well, guess what? If you make a 48-hour offer deadline to an agent, that gives me as the agent 48 hours to use your offer against you to better it. So that's a silly ploy as well in my eyes as an ex-agent. Like, you don't want to give someone a set time frame because it just gives them parameters that they need to work to. So they can pick up the phone to all the other buyers and say, you got to have your offer in before X date because otherwise we're going to engage with this seller. So they're absolutely going to use it against you to better that price. So you better use the leverage and try and engage them in that fight right now rather than say, I'll give you another day or another 2 days or whatever to think about it. It just, you don't want to give them a time delay, I don't think. I don't think it works in your favor.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I guess just cycling back, another thing that I think is worthwhile when we're talking about the price of the property, I was thinking about it while you're talking, is, what are some of the closest, like if the agent doesn't want to tell you what they think the price is worth, like I see this a lot of times where the listing price, especially in hot markets, it's 500, it's listed for 500. But if you know the market, you know that it's going for 530. And you know that this, like I was chatting to Jeff about this just yesterday. There's an agent that is exactly 7%. You go through all of his listings of when he listed the property and then when he sold the property, it is exactly 7%. So we know where this guy's endpoint is, it's at 7%. So a good question to jump on with agents is, what are some of the closest comparable sales you've got? And what
are you stacking that against?
Yeah. How did you, and then if they're like, oh, you can go onto Domain and do your own research. No. Well, how did you stack this up against with the vendor? What were some of the comparables that you used for them? And they're like, oh, well, actually just letting you know, I sold 2 Smith Street for 520, ABC Street for 520, another one for 525 that had a really nice pool. It's like, okay, cool. Now I can start to see where they've come up with their pricing. I'm not going to secure this for $500,000, but I see value. Like you can start to form value and all of that.
Let's talk about renegotiating because you've done it a few times, and then we'll get onto some case studies, I think.
Yeah, well, I floated that idea because I think it was an interesting trend that I've seen in over the Christmas holidays, and as the markets continue to soften in most areas. I've seen it for the first time in a couple of years is that we've been rejected on offers, which happens all the time, right? That's a year-round thing in any market. You get offers rejected. But in the busier markets, you never see those properties again, right? Like you get rejected and then it sells for a much higher price to somebody else or someone else wraps up a deal above you, whatever the price is. In this instance, and it was a trend because it happened to me 3 times in about 10 days, that we had offers rejected in the second half of December. We stayed in the game. I follow up, as I always do, if we have an offer rejected and we've still got an interest in the property, track that, stay in touch, a high level communication with the agent. It's not desperation. It's just, we want to know what's happening in the market. We're tracking every sale, just checking back in, seeing what's happening with that. Anything changed with a better offer than we made? Anything changed with the vendor or circumstances? Not great, cool, chat to you next week again. Like it's that non-emotional and business-like for me. So they don't get any sense of I'm going to pay any more money. They just get a sense of he's still really interested with his client to buy this property. So that happened 3 times. They came back this time in January and said, Mr. Aggett, is your client still there? Like, we're kind of open to talking to you again now. And that's kind of music to a negotiator's ears. It's like, really? Okay, cool, sweet. Let's dance.
Yeah. Your favorite call from your favorite agent.
Yeah, exactly. Let's dance.
Oh, Terry, good to hear you again.
Exactly. I love those calls. So, and in those instances, there were 3 really different outcomes, like 3 different sets of circumstances, which I thought were worth unpacking. We don't have to spend too much time on it if you want to, but some good case studies there. And then I guess the key takeaway for me is understanding what you got to do to get yourself prepped to make the ultimate offer up front, and then how you stay in the game to get these opportunities for a second bite of the cherry without sounding like you're an emotional wreck and you're seriously committed to that property, and then get caught in the situation where they come back for a second bite, but because you're so hungry for it, you end up overpaying. You keep putting more money on the table and almost chasing the vendor because you get the door open and another shot at the title. So, in each of these instances, it played out differently, but nothing changed in terms of our ice cold response to it. And then we had to make a decision on whether we would increase, hold them or fold them, basically, to make a decision. And that's based on, we're probably getting a little bit further ahead, but knowing whether to hold them or fold them when you do get that second bite of the cherry is very much down to in-depth market knowledge. Because if you're tracking the market really closely, you understand how difficult it's going to be to replicate that asset. So each of the circumstances is always going to be different. There's no one-size-fits-all response to this that you can say as a negotiation strategy that if you get a second bite of the cherry, you should say this. It just doesn't work because everything's going to be different. The market's changing, the dynamics are out, which is the reason why they're calling you in the first place and it hasn't sold. The vendor's circumstances may have changed. There may be other buyer interest at a lower point where you were, which means that even though you think you're the only buyer that they might have called back, in real terms, you might end up re-engaging with 3 or 4 other people and in a contract race at the price where you saw value the first time. So it changes all the time, but it's just making sure that you don't get emotionally carried away, but also, more importantly, making sure that you actually get a second bite of that cherry. And that's by staying in touch with these agents and being, as I say, a high-level communicator.
So your walk away price was actually 1.1, but you're saying I'm not going to my walk away price. I know that they don't have buyer interest, but how long do you wait between those conversations? Because they could go out there and get buyer interest and then come back to you and start drumming you up a little bit more as well.
That is a really good question, and I don't think enough people will understand how important that is. And I'll give you another example of this in Brisbane that's happened this week for us that exactly that is played out. So we've got a property where another property in the same suburb in the Gap for a different buyer in Brisbane. The owner wants 1.1 million. They had interest in the high 9s. We offered $1.5 million. She rang me back and said, your $1.5 million is losing. There's a buyer above you. And I established that the buyer was at $1.15 million. So I established that the buyer was just above us. So I went to $1.15 million, like a tiny step forward to that. And she said, you're in the lead, but my owner is not going to counter offer any of the 3 offers because you're all too far away from the price that they want. So we're going to run it to an open for inspection on Thursday, tomorrow, and then possibly on Saturday and see how we go if we can get the higher price. If we don't get the price that we want and what we think it's worth, we'll come back and renegotiate with the 3 of you later. So I rang my client and I said, okay, we're in the lead at $1.15 million. They'd set me a target price. I hope this agent's not listening, by the way, of $1.40 million. And he said, well, let's go to $1.40 million and get our best foot forward. But I said to him, there's no point going to that level because the seller is not ready to make a decision. So if I go to $1.30 million or $1.40 million now, they're going to still say no, right? Because they're not mentally ready to take that price. And then when they come back to us to re-engage, you've got no ammo. You got nowhere to go. So you're potentially going to get mowed down by someone else, or you're just going to have to say no, and you can't step up anymore as well. So we left it at $1.15 million, and now I've got a chance of buying it for $1.15 million, right? Because if no one else steps
100%.
up and be the highest bidder, we may end up saving tons of money out of it. So that's where an inexperienced buyer would put $25,000 more on the table, and they don't have to. And look, we may have to in 3 days' time, but I'd rather do it when I know more about the circumstances and when I know the seller is panicking. Because if they realize they can't get their price, all of a sudden $1.15 million becomes the benchmark, and then it's up to whoever's prepared to put you more money on the table.
So is it kind of about being willing
goal
to lose the property if you know that there's market depth? Is that, or not market depth, there's more stock on market that you could pick up? Is that kind of what it's a little bit about?
It's more about the holding your cards, right? Like because if you go to that level where you've got nothing left in the tank, you are just exposed, really, because someone else can offer $1 more and you can't beat it, and or the owner's going to come back and say, okay, great, we'll do it for $1.50 million, and you can't do it either. So it's just frustrating. So I think you're better off to leave some, petrol in the tank and give yourself that flexibility. And sometimes it lands in your court where you don't have to even spend another $25,000. You just say, well, if they come back to you and they say, there's no one else, you're at $1.15 million, but that's not enough to buy, I'll just say, well, that's not enough to buy it then. Like, you're not enough to sell it, you mean? Like, that means you're not going to get a deal across the line. Like, how motivated is your client? Well, 3 days ago, 5 days ago, they'd already bought a house and they really needed to sell in week 1. It's the end of week 1. You still bought a house last weekend. So that's Turkey. And my price is $1.15 million. Yeah, and we just sort of start. You do that politely. You don't. That was arrogant and sounds silly, but yeah, you do that politely and above board, and you hope that you can re-engage. And sometimes, like I just explained to you with case study 1, sometimes it takes another 10 or 15 grand or whatever it might do to put more on the table. And because you've got that left up your sleeve, you can do that and get the deal done quick.
I want to know what are some of the key mistakes that the people are making in their negotiations?
Well, I mean, we highlighted quite a few of them there, isn't it? I mean, I think the biggest thing that people make is they don't understand market value. And then they don't set themselves that hard decision-making process of where they're going to walk away from it. So they get emotionally invested. And then they don't understand the process. So those 3 things are critical to having success in negotiation. It doesn't cost any money to learn those things. It doesn't take a huge amount of time. But if you can just be diligent with understanding how the process works, so you know the steps that they come in what order. And then I think the other big thing that Joey just said just then, which is I just see so much, even for some of our clients, it kills me, that say, I'm absolutely finance ready. And then you get to, the pointy end of the transaction and they're not finance ready. It's like, what bit of finance ready do we is not clear here? Like, do you have access to the finance? Do you have a deposit? Do you have the funds to pay stamp duty and the rest of it? You'd think those things are really straightforward, but a lot of people just go out there and start shopping. They start wasting agents' time, and then they just wait for properties to come on Real Estate Domain, and they're not doing any of the smart thinking about how to find these opportunities to outsmart their neighborinos or future neighborinos.
Do you have any experience approaching owners directly for properties that aren't for sale? That's a good question.
Yep, lots of it over time. And of course, having done 20 years as a real estate principal, I was approaching owners directly for properties like this all the time. So tons and tons of experience dealing with private sellers and trying to get people to market and trying to buy properties off market for clients as well. And there's a certain way that you need to approach private sellers because they're a special breed. If they're private sellers that are on the market, then this question specifically says that aren't for sale. But if they're on the market, I'll just answer that point briefly. Then it's typically because they think their shit doesn't stink, like they don't want to pay an agent a fee because they don't see any value in it. It's mainly because the agents told them their house isn't worth, or their property's worth less than they wanted to hear, so they think they can go it alone and cut corners. That's my vast experience dealing with private sellers that are on the market. The ones that are off market, you've really got to go to them with a compelling reason as to why they should sell. So rather than the smoke and mirrors approach, with dealing with an agent and maybe being in stealth mode if you think that's the best way to buy, and not giving them too much of information about what you do and the rest of it. I find that my best outcomes have always been being tremendously open with private sellers and saying to them, look, we'd like to buy a house and we know why you probably don't want to sell your house because that's the reason we want to buy it, right? Because it's a beautiful home in a great street and a great location, and our client would love to be there, or I'd love to live in that property. And these are the reasons why I think this is a great offer that we're making you. And here are the savings that you're going to make by not engaging an agent. You don't have to play those games. We make it really simple for you. This is a written offer for you with very clear terms. We're completely flexible for you as well. So if you want to rent the property back and have your money fast, you can. If you want a long settlement so you find another property, you can. If you want your money out of there in 30 days and move on, you can. Come to them with solutions, not problems. And I think that's a much easier way to transact with people and complete and utter transparency. Here's all the comparable sales. Here's why we arrived at X. And we're happy to debate that with you and openly discuss why we think your home is worth Y. But here's all the inner workings for it. And here's where we found that data. And you can go and have a look at that for yourself as well. And then I go to great lengths to explain to them that if you speak to an agent, which you are most welcome to do, be aware that the first thing they're going to do, because I was an agent, is talk you out of a private sale because they want to get a fee out of it. So they're going to tell you that the price is too low and that they can better that and that you should take the property to open market. Now, they're only doing that because they want to build their profile and they want to, extract a fee out of it that they otherwise wouldn't get. And if you can show me the comparable sales that back up a price that suggests that they're right, I'm open and willing to have a conversation with you about it. But here's all of the data openly, and it doesn't lead you to a sale price of X.
What sort of data? How do you determine the market price?
Well, same way we would always do it. Like, what's on the market competing with that home right now? How hard is it to replicate that asset in the market? So is this, you want to buy a 4-bedroom house in this street? Are they one every 10 years? Is it one every 6 weeks? How long is it going to take you? Like, what's the scarcity factor? And then what are the direct comparable sales? What are the other 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 2-living areas on 700 square meters that have just sold within the last 90 days, if you can, with the same aspect, that are in a similar condition? Now, there's not always a like-for-like comparable, but in most areas of built-up Australia, there's plenty of data that arrives, at the number that you need very quickly. It doesn't take us more than, honestly, if we went at it hardcore, we might be able to do it in an hour. We prefer to take, 4 or 5 hours to do it properly, to work out where we think the market estimate sits. And we'll even lean on agents, independent agents. So if you had a property, Jeff, that was on the market, I would ring Joe, who's a competing agent, and say, Joe, I'm interested in buying 15 Smith Street. Jeff wants 1.6 for it. What do you think it's worth in your instance? And Joe might say, listen, it's probably worth 1.7. Like, we've had buyers of ours go through it already. I know one of my clients has already offered 1.72. I suspect that's market for it. I can't see it going much beyond that. But look, I'm not in control of the listing. Of course, the market will determine it. But I have those honest conversations. I just ring them up and say, hey, Joe, you're an expert in your field. I really respect what you do. You've got a great track record. I've called you because you obviously, hold a lot of weight in your area as one of the lead agents. Really like 2 minutes of your time just to pick your brain on this. Good agents have seen all the properties. They know it. They probably pitched for the listing and know what the vendor wants and didn't get it for whatever reason, because the agent, the owners saw 3 or 4 people before they made a decision. So we made it our business when I had Belle in Surrey Hills. We made it our business to go and see every one of our competitors' listings that was in our core market. So someone from our team or all of our sales team went through all of our competitors' listings. We were at every auction that our competitors had on a Saturday, so we could see where the bidding started, who was bidding and where they bid to, and where it stopped and what things sold for in real time. So it's about data points, right? So they, you lean on those data points and get their opinions. But remember, everyone's got their own opinion. You need to draw the line somewhere yourself, so you need to be educated yourself. People will lean on agents, and there's a vested interest sometimes in them shitbagging a property or talking it up for whatever reason. There might be a mate of theirs that owns it. So you've got to, take everything with a pinch of salt and make sure you do your own research too.
Yeah, and one of my favorite strategies is you look on real estate, you look on RP data, you look on domain. Some of those properties, it's taken 3 months. So it may have sold for 550, but if you're in a hot market, you want to know what is today's price. What is the price that things are actually selling? So what I do is I call up all of the under offers. You see a property, hey, Cheryl, great property here that you've got listed. I see it's under offer. I'm looking for something exactly the same. But look, where are we? Where did this one end up? And just be super friendly. And not all the agents are going to give you the information, but she'll say, look, this actually went for 555. Oh, wow, actually, I was speaking to John, and that one went for 555. That one went for 555. But everything on real estate and domain is at 540. So you now know where you need to kind of be, because it's going to take a month or two before the pest and building, the settlement, the process gets uploaded and uplifted. Know your market inside.
And you can do that within 4 to 8 weeks. I reckon you can be an expert in any market in 4 to 8 weeks. If you track, every listing that's suitable for what you're wanting to use as a comparable to what you end up buying. If you physically get out and inspect, I think up to 50 properties. So if you're in a market where there's that sort of volume, I tend to make up to 50 inspections before I buy, or I used to at least when I was buying property myself for our family. So I knew what things were selling for in real time. I was going to auctions. I was understanding market depth. And then very quickly within 4 weeks, 6 weeks, you understand what's going on. And it's very hard for an agent to pull wool over your eyes, or for you to overpay for a private seller off market like that if you've been tracking the market really closely. And then you'll have all those data points to reference.
100%.
What's the strategy to negotiate in a hot market? Well, leverage isn't going to work as well in a hot market, because there's no fear of loss for the agent because the market depth is so strong that they can just
Yeah.
park you, excuse me, and sell it to someone else, right? Or engage multiple other parties that are going to push the price up in a competitive bidding process. So the strategy changes. My strategy in a rising market or a hot market might be, well, we're unconditional, we're all cash, we can settle in 30 days or whatever it is that I know the owner wants because I've asked all the pre-qualifying questions. So it's getting yourself and all your ducks lined up that you can move really fast. A strategy for me might be organizing, if you're watching the market and you know exactly what you want to buy and you've set a shopping list and the dream property on paper comes up, what do you do in a hot market? Well, you go and drive past it or walk past it during the day and at night. You look at traffic flow and you do all those things that you would have done post falling in love with it at the first open for inspection on Saturday. So do that as soon as you saw it on realestate.com or Domain if you haven't already found this off market. So take time out of the equation. And the other thing that you can do, look, if it ticks all the boxes and you look at it and go, oh my God, it's my dream street, faces the right way, it's in the school zone, whatever the parameters are that's important to you, then organize a building and pest inspection or a strata search if it's an apartment prior to seeing it. Because the chances are you're going to like the property anyway when you go inside it. You've seen the photos, you've seen the floor plan, you watched the agent's video, you've been past the house morning, noon and night, you already know the streets, you know the school zone, you know you want to be in that position and you know it's going to fall within your budget constraints. Pre-order the building and pest or the strata report, get it done so that you can turn up, have the contract reviewed, turn up at the first open for inspection at 1 minute past 12 or 1 minute before 12 ideally and say, there's my offer. I've walked through the house. There it is. Unconditional. There's a check, whatever it is. There's all the, 66W or there's no cooling off, whatever it might be. I've done all my due diligence already. And if you happen to see a seller that's motivated, there's a bloody good chance they're going to take that offer if it's a fair offer. And there's no point in a rising market or a hot market making stupid lowball offers or starting low thinking, oh, it's a really great property and I want it, but I'm just going to go like a little bit lower and it's a negotiation. I'll start low and then we'll build up to it because you're just going to get punted straight away. So you're smarter to go, hey, this is worth $1 million all day of the week. I'm going to go to $1.1 million straight up. And I'm going to own it because if this gets on the open market, it's going to be 3 or 4 months to replicate this asset. I know there's going to be 20 people on it because I've seen there's so many underbidders at all the auctions and there's 50 people at every open for inspection at the moment. So if I pay 10 grand too much for this house, it's nothing in the grand scheme of things because it's exactly the home that I want. So you've got to think about how else can I put myself in pole position to stand out from the pack. And when you do that little trick with the building and pest inspection, often I'll turn up at the building and pest at the end of it legally. I haven't pre-approved that, but they're very likely just to let you in because you've already paid for the building and pest, and you might just be able to quickly run around the house while the agent's on the phone or having your coffee, and then you've seen it. No one else has seen it. You might have seen it on the Tuesday or the Wednesday, and then the next day you're able to make an unconditional offer before the first open for inspections even happened.